What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I got some updates, including a pretty big story regarding a player that could be potentially traded. We'll get to that in just a minute. Real fast, I want to let you guys know about, though, just some updates on injuries. So it looks like Devontae Parker, Kirk Merritt, and Shaq Lawson were not spotted at practice today. Jakeem Grant appears to be back practicing, and Xavier Howard appeared to be fully participating in practice through individual drills. He appears to be running well and moving well at practice. So there's that. Just wanted to update you there. Obviously, you know, having Xavier Howard back is important. We would want all those guys back. I mean, Devontae Parker, Shaq Lawson, and Jakeem Grant are all expected to be, you know, key pieces on this roster. So, you know, if any of them are injured at any time, that's you know, problematic for this team, etc. But, you know, we still got 10 days until our first game, so there's a little bit of time. Brian Flores said that he hopes that, you know, Devontae Parker and Shaq Lawson and whatever and Kirk Merritt are off the injury report next week. We'll have to wait and see, but you know, it's not boding too well. Our receiving core looks like it's you know, gonna have gone from being one of the strongest positions to one of the most concerning positions on the roster. You know, after Allen Hurns and Albert Wilson decided to opt out, and now with, you know, injuries, I mean, pretty much every single one of the guys that we expect to be on the team has pretty significant injury history. Devontae Parker, Jakeem Grant, Preston Williams, even with his, you know, ACL tear. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But in addition to that, there is some pretty big news as and look, you know, this is definitely going to be a I told you so moment, because I told you guys that this was likely to happen. You know, and here we are, right? So what is it exactly that I'm talking about? Well, according to multiple sources, Josh Rosen trade rumors. Dolphins shopping quarterback after Tua's injury recovery. Miami Dolphins quarterback Josh Rosen might be looking at his third team in as many years. ESPN's Adam Schefter reported the Dolphins have been encouraged by Tua Tagovailoa's recovery from hip surgery that they fielded trade inquiries in recent days regarding Rosen. Rosen's days in Miami were effectively numbered when the team selected Tagovailoa 5th overall in the 2020 NFL Draft. The same scenario played out with the Arizona Cardinals, who took Rosen number 10th overall in 2018. Once Kyler Murray arrived as the number 1 overall pick in 2019, the team didn't have a compelling reason to keep the former UCLA star and dealt him to the Dolphins for a 2nd and 5th rounders. Right, so remember, we'll get more into this in just a second, but remember, he was effectively our 2nd round pick from 2019, because we didn't have a 2nd round pick that year, and we got Josh Rosen, which we gave up a 2nd round pick and a 5th round pick from this past year. So he effectively cost our 2019 2nd round pick and a 2020 5th round pick. And we have netted nothing for him at this point, right? He's been a complete bust for us, as I said was going to happen. Trading Rosen this time will be tough if general manager Chris Grier wants something of value in return. Rosen made 6 appearances in 2019, throwing for 567 yards, 1 touchdown, and 5 interceptions. That was after an uneven 2018 season in Arizona, when he finished with 2,278 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions in 14 games. The Dolphins have little leverage in trade negotiations, with Tagovailoa clearly the quarterback of the future, and they can't easily sell Rosen as a big long-term asset. He's still only 23, so giving up on him would be premature, but Rosen will presumably be the backup wherever he might land, so he's looking at another year on the sidelines. More than anything, he needs stability, even if that means taking a back seat. So we're pause just for a second, and that's what I've been saying this entire time, right? Josh Rosen has a lot of the skill and stuff necessary to be a really good quarterback. The problem was he came into the league in a terrible situation, and it's stuff like that happens all the time in the league that proves the philosophy of all you need is a fucking quarterback, especially you just got to take one of the top talents in the first round. as an approach to how to build a team is stupid and foolish, and the vast majority of the time doesn't work, right? Because the problem with Rosen is he went into a terrible situation. The offensive line was absolutely trash, and he had some pretty, while he does have a lot of the necessary skill set, he did come into the league with some pretty big flaws as well. And then because he was put into a terrible situation with no offensive line, no help around him, etc., he, not only were those flaws exposed, but then they were made worse, and he developed additional bad habits because of it, right? Like having gotten used to getting pummeled so much, now he's looking over his shoulder too much, etc. His body language is worse than it used to be, etc., right? So, and then he came to the Dolphins, and I told you guys it wasn't going to work. He was not going to be the guy, and eventually they were going to get rid of him. Now they're going to have to scramble to see if they can get anything for him, or if they're just going to end up getting rid of him at some point, because he's not going to be the guy here. He's not. And I told you, the Josh Rosen experiment, as soon as they did it, I told you guys it's not going to work, and they're proving me right. To be fair, he still is technically on the team. It hasn't happened yet, but there is no question that with Fitzpatrick still on the roster, at least for this year, with Tua on the roster now, expected to be the guy of the future, he is not going to be it, and he will be gone before too long. So, you know, but like I said, he does have an opportunity. I've said this consistently too. I do think he has an opportunity, and like this person, to be a good quarterback in the league. And like this writer said, he just needs help around him. But that's any quarterback, and like any quarterback that comes into the league could be, doesn't matter who they are or where they're picked. Okay. Their surroundings and the environment that they get placed into is just as much important as it is, and just as big a factor as is the individual's talent, abilities, you know, character, whatever, stats from college. All of that is important, but just as much is how you know, the environment that they're put in. So the environment that they're put in can make or break them. Anyway, so look, man, it just, real quick, let me get through this, because I actually just got another alert that I do want to talk about. Another report that came in on Yahoo Sports that I do want to discuss. So let me finish these thoughts, right? So I do think that, but he needs help. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's really it. Like, it's like I said. No. I remember the other part that I wanted to say. So look, from Jump Street, I told you guys that this tanking philosophy was going to be wrong, and that all of the decisions that they have made, I've been telling y'all. And look, there were a couple decisions that they made that were solid, right? And one of them, I'll give you, was, or a couple of them, was extending Jakeem Grant and Xavier Howard the way that they did. However, I did also put in there a caveat that, especially with Xavier Howard, I mentioned this in particular, his contract, not only did they make him the highest paid corner in the league, which then, of course, ate up a ton of cap space, but they also massively front-loaded it. So they gave him like half the contract guaranteed up front, which is cool for the player, and like I like it from that aspect. But they also designed the contract to be super trade friendly for other teams, not them, for other teams. So other teams would be willing to eat the fucking, you know, whatever kind of ramifications. It depends obviously on what year he gets traded and at what point of the contract he's still in, but, you know, be willing to eat some of that contract in order to fucking bring him over, right? But I said it was problematic because they were clearing the roster with guys like Laramie Tunsil and Frank Gore and Ryan Tannehill and you know, Danny Amendola and just all these guys, right? Minka Fitzpatrick. They were getting rid of all these guys. Kenny Stills. And I was like, dude, this is going to be a massive mistake. Not only was it last year, but it's going to continue to prove to be, right? And so, but, what I said is that in regard to Xavier Howard, like the only blue chip guy that they decided to keep, and this plays to their decision-making process and their evaluation process. The only blue chip guy that they decided to keep around was Xavier Howard. And I love him, and I wanted them to. But the one blue chip guy they decided to keep around has serious health issues. And, I hope that he'll be able to make it should they play an entire season. I hope that he can make it all the way through, but I don't have any confidence in that. Same thing with Devontae Parker, to be quite honest with you. But I'm hoping that, the things that, in Parker's case, the things that he did pick up from the coaches and players that were around during the Gase time, I hope that he can keep it together and stay on the field, but we'll see. Anyway, but so, like I said, it was problematic from that perspective. And it shows yet again, same thing with the Josh Rosen discussion of their evaluation is trash, right? So, but let's get into that. So, just real quick, I'm not going to remember a lot of the players' names of players who I would have taken instead, but let me do a quick rundown of the past 2 drafts for the Dolphins under the Brian Flores regime and how I have said that they have horribly mismanaged it and I would have done things way different, right? So first of all, I wouldn't have done the massive purge that they did and engaged in a tanking philosophy. First of all, I didn't think it was necessary that they even hit the reset button at all, because if you really looked at Gase's time here, not only did he do amazing things in his rookie season, take us 10-6 into the playoffs for the first time in 8 years with an average or less team, but then through his drafting, he was proving that he was building the team properly. So it is true that he had setbacks in years 2 and 3, but he had setbacks because of things, due to things that were in no way, shape, or form in his control. So he should not have been blamed for those things and been given the benefit of the doubt and been given, far much more space and leeway than he was given in those situations, and allowed to show and prove that he could get back to the year 1 scenario, right? And get us back to the playoffs after, getting everybody healthy and having yet another draft, right? I mean, anyway, so I didn't think any of that was necessary. I didn't think the whole purge was necessary. I would have done things differently. I would not have brought in Ryan Fitzpatrick, and I would have kept Ryan Tannehill. Look what he ended up doing last season, okay, when put in a good situation. And then I would have not traded for Josh Rosen with our first round pick, and I would have taken the best offensive lineman in the draft. Then instead of Christian Wilkins, especially considering the fact that there was a run on all the top talent on the defensive line before they got to the Christian Wilkins pick. So it didn't make any fucking sense, but I would have taken the top offensive lineman instead of him. In round 2, since we would have had a second round pick instead of trading for Josh Rosen, I would have then gone to the defensive line and picked up help there because we definitely needed it. And then in round 3, I would have taken quarterback Will Grier to have as your backup and to have as your young, quarterback to groom up behind your starting guy, Ryan Tannehill, who, again, to be fair to Ryan Fitzpatrick, I did underestimate his leadership abilities and his spunk and all that stuff and whatnot. And he's a good, bridge quarterback for sure. I just think Tannehill would have been the better quarterback. Why? Because he's half the age and done twice as much as Ryan Fitzpatrick has. Not to mention the myriad of records that Ryan Tannehill holds, both for the Dolphins and the NFL records. Going back to his rookie season when he was just tossed into the fucking fire, right? Anyway, and then, of course, with the rest of the draft, I would have, doubled down on the offensive and defensive lines. I would have hit up the secondary. I would probably would have, I don't know, other skill positions, safety, running back, whatever, right? And then this year, definitely would have done things way differently. Instead of fucking, reaching for Austin Jackson and taking the heavily injury-prone quarterback, I would have taken the 2 top offensive linemen this year. Then I would have taken Xavier McKinney, the top safety, with our 3rd first-round pick instead of Noah Igbenogene, a cornerback that, if he's a boundary cornerback, is completely redundant. And if he's, was taken as a slot corner, which apparently he's been doing a good amount of work at, then, I do have to agree with, oh, god damn it, I can't think of his name off the top of my... K-Flexen, and that you don't take a slot corner in round 1. Especially when you have somebody like Bobby McCain, who you had paid, the Dolphins organization had paid as the top paid slot corner in the league because he performed at that level. Adam Gase's regime paid him like that because he performed at that level. But instead, they decided to fucking move him to safety where he didn't perform all that well and then got hurt. Okay, instead though, they could have had the top safety in the fucking draft, but they decided to go for either a massively redundant boundary corner that seems to be, in the same exact fucking mold as the corner you picked up, Byron Jones, in the offseason to make one of the top 3 highest paid corners, none of which makes any fucking sense, or is a fucking slot corner, in which case you don't take one in the fucking first round. Then I would have taken the top running back, J.K. Dobbins, in the 2nd round, and then I would have hit the defensive line and offensive, or defensive line at that point, because I would have taken, instead of Tua and Austin Jackson, I would have taken the top 2 offensive linemen in this year's draft, and then Xavier McKinney, and then J.K. Dobbins. I mean, look at that talent, and that is efficient for the needs that the Dolphins had this year. And they could have gotten every single one of those players. They could have gotten the top 2 offensive linemen. Again, I can't think of the names off the top of my head. They all blend together. But they could... Austin Jackson was not one of them. And then they could have gotten the top safety and the top running back for sure. And then plugged other holes of massive need after that. But no, okay, whatever. And so, look, I mean, it's playing out, as I've said. Last year, right, the draft class from last year didn't perform well. They massively underperformed. Isaiah Prince isn't even on the fucking team anymore, right? A lot of those guys are injury prone and have significant injury histories. And same thing, and were reaches. And same thing goes for this year's class. To be fair to last year's class, they could make massive improvements in year 2. I don't think that's very likely, but they could. And then, for this year's class, in their defense, they haven't even played their rookie season yet. But with all the factors that play into it, pretty much all new coaching staff with all new playbooks, young and experienced team, which in and of itself is pretty much entirely new, etc., etc., etc. I mean, I don't see them fucked up off season, etc., etc. I don't see them performing well at all this year. So, I mean, look, and I'm telling you, after, year 3.5-ish, Brian Flores, probably Chris Greer too, are going to get scapegoated by Stephen Ross. In other words, they're going to get fired because this whole fucking thing fails, as I've been saying it would. And it's playing out that way. And unfortunate, but look, and you could say, well, COVID-19 and the civil unrest and stuff, those are factors that you talk about when you say, this year's going to get canceled and so on and so forth. That's true. And you also might be able to say, well, those are things that, the Dolphins organization and, the coaching staff, they don't have control over that, just like Gase didn't have control over a hurricane that displaced the team or having one of his linebackers go AWOL, right? He didn't have control over those things. That's true. However, okay, I said at the beginning when they did all this, a major reason why the tanking philosophy is not going to work is because as soon as fucking a wrench gets thrown into the cogs, it's going to throw everything off, right? I told you, there's likely to be something. Early on, there were discussions about, a lockout in 2021, etc., that could have affected it, but there's always something. My life has proven to me that there's always going to be something that fucks up your plans, right? And so something that you just cannot account for. You just cannot predict it. You can't foresee it. There's gonna be something. And here we are. Not only was there something, there are multiple somethings that are massive and huge. Anyway, so with that though, let me go ahead and just flip into this last topic, because I told you there was an article that just came up as I was, discussing these things, and this is really important because this is huge. So this is from Yahoo Sports, a Cassandra Negley. 1/3 of COVID-19 positive Big Ten athletes have myocarditis, Penn State athletic doctor says. So before I actually get into the details, this is obviously talking about Big Ten athletes, so college football, but this is one of the primary reasons why I said they should not have a season to begin with. Not only because of the fact that this virus is so exceptionally contagious and deadly, but because of the fact that, well, initially, because part of it was because I said we don't know shit about it, and that's scary. But now as we learn more about it, one of the primary reasons I've said in the past several weeks is that it fucks with you so bad internally that you are going to have serious, significant side effects for a long period of time. And there are so many reports of that now, of people who have had it but are struggling with lingering side effects. People who have died weeks later because they had some sort of, brain issue or heart issue that was directly correlated to this, right? They are risking people's lives. So recently, in the NFL, they just had 4 players and 6 staff members test positive for it. If they survive and don't die, through the initial wave of sickness, or even if they don't get sick at all, it's still likely to do tremendous harm to their bodies, in which case will likely cause them to still die an early death, a young death, or younger than they should, or early because they contracted this virus to begin with. And anyway, so let's get into these details. Around 1/3 of Big Ten athletes who tested positive for COVID-19 appear to have myocarditis, according to Penn State's director of athletic medicine. I'm sorry, one more quick side note. The 1/3 number, from what I've seen from different reports of people in general, that does seem to be about the case. About 1/3 of people end up with this serious condition after having had the virus. Okay, but this is only one of many different serious conditions that can happen that scientists have discovered. There's at least 3 or 4 or 5 different, that I've seen, different massively serious medical conditions that can be, that can happen or, rise up after having, contracted this virus. And not just in adults, but kids as well. Anyway, Wayne Sebastianelli delivered the information during a State College area school board of directors meeting on Monday that was reported on by the Center Daily Times. The data underscores Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren's open letter explaining why the conference postponed its fall sports seasons. Sebastianelli called the level of inflammation in the studies alarming. Penn State doctor gives data on myocarditis. Sebastianelli linked COVID-19 and myocarditis, an inflammation of the heart muscle that reduces the heart's ability to pump blood and can be fatal if not addressed. It is the 3rd leading cause of sudden death in young people, per Mayo Clinic cardiologist Dr. Michael Ackerman. So while the virus might not kill young people while they have it, it will likely kill them afterwards, is essentially what is being said here. His comments are available on YouTube. When you looked at our COVID positive athletes, whether they were asymptomatic or not, 30 to roughly 35% of their heart muscles are inflamed, Sebastianelli said, and we really just don't know what to do with it right now. It's still very early in the infection, Some of that has led to the Pac-12 and the Big Ten's decision to sort of put a hiatus on what's happening. Dude, I'm telling you, the risks are not worth it. And I'm telling you, the NFL, before long, is going to have massive issues with this. And again, like, I wish that I didn't have to say to people, I told you so. I really don't. Because, or I really do. I really wish that I didn't have to say that to people. Because when I do, it's almost always terrible things. I'm great at predicting terrible things because I will tell people ahead of time. I will say, listen, this is what's coming. I foreshadow it for you. I'm like, hey, and I do my best to be as specific as I possibly can, right? But I give a broad general perspective, and then I fine tune it as much as I can with the data and information that I have. But I say, look, if things go this course, terrible things are going to happen. If things change, and if people do things differently, if people heed the advice and the warnings that are being given right now, we can change things and we can negate a lot of this. We can fucking, avoid a lot of the terrible, so on. But people never fucking listen. And then they always demonize me as if I'm the bad guy and as if I'm just being fucking negative because reality's fucking negative, but they can't handle the fucking truth. Or, they can't be bothered to have to fucking do anything themselves. If they have to put any fucking effort into it, well, fuck it, it's not worth it. Anyway, but in this case, like with the NFL, obviously, like I said, it's all just greed of the NFL itself and the owners. That's all they care about. They don't care about the health and safety of the players or the personnel or the fans. But I'm telling you, it's going to cause massive issues. Somebody is going to die at some point. They're going to prove me right, and I'm going to have to say it. But guess what? I'm going to say it because I was saying it then. Nobody fucking listened. And when you prove me fucking right, as devastating and as hard as it might be to fucking swallow, I'm going to fucking say it because people need to wake the fuck up and understand. And they need to start fucking heeding the advice. Anyway, let's continue on. Myocarditis was reportedly linked last month to several Big Ten athletes who contracted COVID-19. It can cause cardiomyopathy, a disease of the heart muscle. So there's another additional, heart problem that can come. First, you can get the myocarditis, which then can develop into cardiomyopathy, which that is the myocarditis is just inflammation of the heart and can cause serious issues, even death, but then it can develop into this apparent disease, cardiomyopathy. You could have a very high-level athlete who's got a very superior VO2 max and cardiac output who gets infected with COVID and can drop his or her VO2 max and cardiac output just by 10%. And that could make them go from elite status to average status. I mean, and so even from a business perspective, okay, why would you do that, right? Because, so it's terrible that they view people like this, but they view them as assets, especially in the NFL, without question. But that's how our capitalist society is designed, right? Humans are what's the term? Fuck, I can't remember. It's human, like, cattle stock or something like that. Anyway, whatever. Point is they consider us to be fucking cattle. They consider us to just be expendable assets, right? So, but why would you do that? Like, these are athletes, right? So if you don't care about their health and their safety, if that's not a concern for you, strictly from a business perspective, you would fucking should have concern. Because if your star athletes get it, and then they are not star athletes anymore because of how they are so substantially affected by this thing, even if they don't die, right? If they don't play anywhere near the level that they were before because their heart's all fucked up or whatever now, like, why would you want to do that? Because then you're going to end up wasting tons of money, etc., etc., etc. Anyway, not to mention the fucking, the medical bills and stuff that they're going to have to go, that your doctors are going to have to fucking see them and treat them and so on and so forth. Anyway, unless, of course, you're just fucking giant scumbags and leave them to fend for themselves, which often does honestly happen in the NFL. We don't know that. We don't know how long that's going to last. What we have seen is when people have been studied with cardiac MRI scans, symptomatic and asymptomatic COVID infections, is a level of inflammation in cardiac muscle that just is alarming. Data underscores Big Ten on medical uncertainty. The Big Ten postponed its football season in early August, and there were reports that the issue of myocarditis was discussed within the meetings. The only thing the conference provided on the decision at the time was that there was too much uncertainty regarding potential medical risks to allow our student athletes to compete this fall. And that is absolutely the smart decision, and that is the right decision, the moral decision, all of that. A week later, first-year commissioner Kevin Warren penned an open letter to clarify the situation. He wrote it was thorough and deliberative decision and based on sound feedback, guidance, and advice from medical experts. He pointed to cardiomyopathy in the letter and wrote there was simply too much we don't know about this virus. The data provided by Penn State's Director of Athletic Medicine puts numbers on those concerns and shows the seriousness of COVID-19's impact. The long-term effects are still being studied and discovered. But let's also note that while we are still very much learning about this fucking thing, it is also spreading rampantly, especially in this country, but also in places like Brazil and India and certainly around the world. Even a lot of the European countries that were doing really well have started to see resurgence. So like Spain is having a massive resurgence, etc., etc. Anyway, point is that it's continuing to evolve and mutate because that's what viruses do. And hear me now, quote me later. I've said this a million times, but once we get to fall and flu season, it is going to hit, and it is going to hit hard, and it is going to be devastating. And I'm telling you, the NFL is going to get shut down. They are going to have outbreaks. Look, man, the very first game is played on the 10th. 7 days from now, the Chiefs and Texans will be playing, and they're going to have about 22% of fucking the stadium filled. Okay, that's going to be the first big case study. We're going to see if there's going to be an outbreak at the stadium amongst fans and so on and so forth. Then you have, then the rest of the league starts playing games on the 13th. Including the Dolphins, obviously, and we'll be playing the Patriots. That will be in New England. I'm not sure if there's going to be fans there or not. I don't think so, but I'm not sure. Either way, though, for the Dolphins home opener, there's going to be 20% of fans in the stadiums. And I know that there are other teams that are going to have fans. So it won't be long before we have to see, or before we won't have to wait long before we see what happens, with that kind of stuff. And if there are outbreaks, man, and I'm telling you, like I said, it's all adding up to spell disaster, and it's gonna be terrible. And again, just to cap this off, I hope that they prove me wrong in numerous ways. But so far, I am being proven correct in a lot of ways. Hopefully we can avoid some, because if I continue to be proven right, not only are the Dolphins going to be trash this year, but there are going to end up being outbreaks and people are going to die from the virus, which is the worst of the worst. So let's hope I can avoid being right about those things, but we are on crash course for it, unfortunately. So, and unfortunately, that's how I'm going to have to end this, because that's the last of the reporting and commentary that I have for now. So with that, I'm going to get out of here. I hope you guys at least appreciate my perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.